Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Retired Psychiatrist channel. I'm going to be recording a couple of videos about the psychology of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And this first video is about Shinji's character arc and how it follows the universal pattern of the hero's journey as described by Joseph Campbell in his classic book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Now, the starting point of this theory is Carl Jung's analytical psychology, and the basic premise here is that the human mind is not a blank slate, but that it contains archetypes, which are inherited structures of the psyche that organize and direct the development of the mind. We can never get to know these archetypes directly, we can only know their manifestations. And an example of these manifestations of the archetypes is the universal pattern that we see in folk tales, myth, religion, and visions, including the hallucinations of schizophrenics. And these are universal patterns seen across history throughout every human culture. So Joseph Campbell took that ball and ran with it. He wrote his book after identifying a basic universal structure among worldwide myths and legends, and he called this structure the monomyth. He said that the monomyth emerged because universal myths reflect conflicts that are common to all people and show how to resolve these conflicts. A common goal of the myth is the reconciliation of opposites. And if you think back to the original Neon Genesis Evangelion movie, I think it was called The End of Evangelion, there was a quote on the cover that said, "The fate of destruction is also the joy of rebirth." And this is an example of reconciling opposites, in this case, destruction and rebirth. Campbell says that reconciling the opposites allows the hero to see the original problem or whatever event sent his quest into motion from a different perspective, and that allows him or her to resolve it and move forward with his or her development. And this development normally will take the direction of starting from unconsciousness when the baby is one with the mother, then the emergence of consciousness and development of the ego, and then the personal development or growing into a more mature personality. Now, when you move in life, you're going to face times of crisis, and you're also going to face turning points in life. Will leave you three: become paralyzed or regress. An example of a turning point in life is the transition from adolescence into adulthood, which is what Shinji will be facing in the series. So you can move forward, in this case, to adulthood. You can become paralyzed and remain psychologically an adolescent forever, or you can regress to a previous stage, becoming a child, or if you go back all the way, you'll go back to the womb, where you will renounce your own sense of self, individuality, and in order to obtain an existence that is free of conflict. But then you will be disconnecting from reality. That's the price to pay. Now, regression, interestingly, may be used in a positive way. If it allows the hero to connect with the unconscious, you go all the way back to the womb. You gather the resources that allow you to move forward, come back to the real world, and overcome the crisis or the transition that set the events in motion. Now, these are the 17 stages of the monomyth according to Joseph Campbell, but it's interesting that he remarked that not all myths have all stages, and in fact, Neon Genesis Evangelion skips a number of these. And also, stages may appear in different order in different myths. In the case of Evangelion, we will see there's a skip from stage 7 to stage 7, which is meeting with the goddess, to a stage 14, which is to be rescued from without. And also, different myths will be emphasizing these stages to different degrees. So, Before we start, it's important to identify or describe what's going to be Shinji's task or goal in engaging in his own hero's journey. He starts as an extreme introvert. So part of what he needs to achieve is incorporating some extroversion into his conscious personality. So he tends to withdraw from the world and become disconnected from other people, and he needs to develop his desire and interest for the external world, including other people. In the beginning of the series, he's also overcome with self loathing. And he needs to overcome that and grow into an adult personality with the social skills that implies, while learning to relate to others without fluctuating between extreme dependency and complete withdrawal from the world. Okay, so Joseph Campbell says that the first stage in the monomyth is the call to adventure. This is where the hero starts off in a mundane situation of normality from which some information is recovered that acts as a call to head into the unknown. For Shinji, his situation of normality was the life he was living with Gendo's teacher, which he described in a conversation with Kaoru in episode 24, I think, as, quote, "Nothing ever happened, and I just had to exist," unquote. So the event that puts everything into motion is when Gendo sends Shinji a letter ordering to come to Nerve headquarters. And then he meets Misato, who introduces him to the world of adventure. Stage two is refusal of the call. The hero oftentimes refuses to hit the call for adventure when it's given. And this may be due to a sense of obligation or duty, or also fear, insecurity, sense of inadequacy, and so forth. In the series, we see this when Shinji is informed by Gendo that the reason why he was brought to Nerve was to pilot an Eva, and he refuses to do so. And eventually, he only accepts when he sees that Rey is tasked with fighting the angels, even though she is seriously hurt. Stage 3 is the supernatural aid, and once the hero has committed to the quest, his or her guide and magical helper appears or becomes known. And for Shinji, that's the Eva 1, a colossus of supernatural power, which also serves as the mother's proxy, since it is a depository or holder of the mother's soul. This is going to be his supernatural aid or magical helper. Stage 4 is crossing the first threshold, where the person actually crosses into the field of adventure, leaves the known limits of his or her own world behind, and enters an unknown and dangerous realm where the rules and limits are not known. And this is when Shinji eventually decides to pilot the Eva 1. Stage 5 is called the belly of the whale, and this is when the hero is swallowed by a whale, which can also be a dragon or a monster. And this is symbolic of a return to the maternal womb, which in turn represents a psychological regression to a previous developmental stage. So, what does this mean? Shinji starts in adolescence. In his case, he's going to regress not to childhood, not even to infancy, but as we will see, he's going to regress all the way back to the womb. This regression to the womb is symbolic of a psychological process where the psyche, the consciousness, dives into the unconscious. So the unconscious is represented by the inside of the monster, the whale, and the inside of the monster is a proxy for the mother's womb. And this can also be a place. It can be, for example, the hero descending to the underworld or a netherworld and then uh, returning to the normal world. The danger of this process is not coming back. Once the hero returns to the womb, becomes, so to speak, one with the mother again, where he's protected and there's no conflict or danger or threats from the outside world. Uh, the hero may become so comfortable that he refuses to return to the everyday, ordinary world. And Evangelion shows this stage pretty clearly, where Shinji literally enters the womb of the mother's proxy, which is Eva 1, and there he is submerged in LCL, which is a stand in for amniotic fluid. So it's pretty obvious that he is inside the belly of the whale or back to the mother's womb when he enters Eva 1. Stage 6 is the road of trials. It's a series of tests, tasks, or ordeals that the person must undergo to begin the transformation. And in many cases, the person will fail one or more of these tests. For Shinji, this is, of course, the series of battle against the angels that we see throughout the anime. Stage 7 is meeting with the goddess, where the hero experiences a love that has the power and significance of an all powerful, all encompassing, unconditional love, like the love an infant experiences from his or her mother. So, as we saw, what's happening here is that the conscious mind is diving into the unconscious. Jung called the psychological resources libido, and these resources are normally turned to the outside world, your attention, your motivation, your concentration, and so forth. But if you introvert the libido, if you turn it inwards instead of outwards, it will progressively activate the contents of the unconscious, starting from the personal unconscious and then all the way to the collective unconscious. There, in the collective unconscious, if the libido is introverted enough, it will activate the archetype of the mother. And this is what results. The activation of the archetype of the mother results in meeting with the goddess, in these visions or experiences of meeting the goddess. And this is where this series really reaches the next level. I mean, the psychological depth and symbolic depth that we see here, I think is unmatched. Not only probably in all of anime, but in all of audiovisual entertainment, movies and TV series and whatnot. It starts on episode 16, which is titled "Splitting of the Breast." And in that episode, Shinji is fighting an angel, and in the process, he is trapped in what is called Klein space. Now, Klein space has two meanings. In real world, in real mathematics, there is something called Klein space. But also, this is the name of Melanie Klein. And Melanie Klein is the psychoanalyst that described the origin of splitting. And splitting is a defense mechanism arising during the experience of breastfeeding. So see how the title, the episode of the title is "Splitting of the Breast," and Shinji is trapped in Klein space. What Hideaki Anno is saying here is that he's trapped in the stage of development described by Melanie Klein. Now, what did Klein say about this stage? She said that during the experience of being breastfed, the baby will see the feeding breast as an all good object, an object that's comforting and satisfying and loving and warm, and everything is good with the world. Once the mom withdraws the breast from the baby, then the baby switches and sees the breast as an all negative object that's depriving him of satisfaction and meaning, and taking away his happiness. And that happens, according to Klein, because the infant is incapable of consolidating the positive and negative aspects of an object into a single image. Okay, so for the infant, it's impossible to conceive of the breast as something that has some good aspects and some bad aspects. The good breast may be one object, the bad breast must be a different object. The problem is if this defense mechanism becomes dominant or prevalent later in life, it will be very problematic. And these are people that see others around him or her as all good or all bad, often within from one moment to the next. So the person, for example, will see the significant other or a friend as all good, perfect in every way, and then there's a conflict, and boom, he or she will see the friend or significant other as evil and all bad. The person is incapable of reconciling the positive and negative aspects of the other person into a single image. One of the goals of maturing as we grow up is being able to integrate the positive and negative aspects of an object into a single image. And even life at large, that life is not good, it's not bad, you will have a little bit of both, and you have to flow with the changes. This is described in the series as Shinji trying to take only the good things in life and putting them together like the beads of a rosary. He is splitting, he is stuck in this stage of development. That's why the title is called Splitting of the Breast. Now, while Shinji is in this Klein space, he goes into an introspective journey and he encounters his mother. This is the encounter with the goddess. The first of two encounters with the goddess, because the second one happens in episode 20, which, again, interestingly and remarkably, is called the oral stage. The oral stage is a Freudian stage of development where the main area from which the individual derives pleasure is the mouth. So, again, this is the breastfeeding stage. And if the person doesn't move forward with his development and this stage dominates the personality of the adult, the individual will always expect his satisfaction and happiness to come from others and to come from the external world instead of arising out of his own efforts. So when Shinji achieves a 400% synchronization rate with the Eva, he goes into another introspective journey, again encounters his mother, and is rescued from without, this time thanks to the efforts of Misato and Ritsuko. What we see then is stage 14 of the Monomyth, when the hero is rescued from without. Here, the hero needs a powerful guide to bring him back to everyday life, especially if the hero has been wounded or weakened by the experience. And what Ano is saying in episode 16 and episode 20, splitting of the breast and the oral stage, is that this cycle of introversion, then meeting the goddess, and then being rescued by either the mother or a proxy like Misato or Ritsuko, is going to keep happening unless Shinji is able to bring himself back to the everyday world by his own effort and will. He has to overcome the oral stage To overcome the oral stage, he has to overcome his tendency to split the world and split others into all good and all bad objects. And eventually, this is what happens when he finally goes inside the Instrumentality Project. That's the one time where he goes into another introspective journey but comes back to the real ordinary world by his own willpower, and conscious effort and decision. So, stage 8 is temptation, where circumstances or material possessions may lead the hero to abandon or stray his or her quest. And this happens when Shinji quits as an EVA pilot after Toji is gravely injured. Stage 9 is atonement with the father, where the hero must confront whatever holds the ultimate power in his or her life, and this is usually his father or a father figure, and this is the center point of the journey. We see that after Toji's injury when Shinji finally confronts his father, and in his own words, quote, "I wanted to tell him that I hate him," unquote. Stage 9 is apostasis. Apostasis is when someone dies a physical death or dies to the self to live in the spirit. And that allows the hero to move beyond the pair of opposites to a state of knowledge, love, compassion, and bliss. So, this is where the hero transcends the pair of opposites. Which brings us to the Instrumentality Project. The purpose of the Instrumentality Project was to alleviate the suffering of the human condition by dissolving specifically the pair of opposites of subject and object, the subject object boundary, to dissolve individuality. So everyone would be merged into this form of existence where everyone is one with everyone and everything else. Again, another symbolism of a return to the womb where the baby is one with the mother and there's no concept of self or separate experience. This is an existence that's free of conflict. Stage 11 is the acquisition of the ultimate boon, and this is the achievement of the goal of the quest. All the previous steps serve to prepare and purify the person for this step. And for Shinji, this is becoming an adult. Remember, the whole goal of his journey is to emerge as a more mature personality, where he learns to accept himself instead of loathing himself. He also learns to accept that others will have positive and negative traits, and that life as a whole will throw both good and bad things at him. This is a state now where he overcomes splitting. He is not expecting his happiness and satisfaction to come always from the outside and from others, but to be the result of his own choices and effort, and where he incorporates some extroversion into his conscious personality, which in turn will help him to develop interest in the world and relate to it. Stage 12 is refusal of the return, when the hero, having found bliss and enlightenment in the other world, may not want to return to the ordinary world. Stage 13 is magic flight, when sometimes the hero must escape with the boon, and this can be as adventurous as the original journey. But these stages do not appear in Evangelion. The series skips these two steps. Sorry about the misspelling there. Stage 15 is crossing the return threshold, where once having acquired the wisdom and retaining that wisdom gained on the quest, the hero integrates it into normal everyday life, and then he may share the wisdom with the rest of the world. And for Shinji, that's simply living as an adult. He didn't reach any, superhuman, enlightened form of existence. In the words of Freud, The goal of psychoanalysis was to change neurotic misery for ordinary suffering. So, yes, Shinji will still suffer as is normal for the human condition, but at least he will have the ordinary suffering of human life instead of the intense misery of the neurosis he was experiencing when the series started. The final two stages, Master of Two Worlds and Freedom to Live, we don't see explicitly in the series, but we can assume that Shinji will go through them after his whole ordeal throughout the anime. This is when achieving a balance between the material and spiritual life, uh, the hero can live a more complete life. And also, this is also freedom from the fear of death, living in the moment, neither anticipating the future or regretting the past. And if you made it all the way here, congratulations, you have excellent um, skills of persistence uh, and attention. We'll see you next week with another exploration of the psychology of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And as usual, thank you so much for your time. You take care. Bye.